Hey guys, welcome to the show. Guys, I just want you guys to know while I'm reading the chat before this whole thing starts, it's just a very good time. I'm sitting here thinking we have been content machines this week. There's been so many podcasts just coming out of Shop Talk. It's just nuts. I don't know how many there's been. It's been three or four, it seems like, and this is going to be one here eventually too. So just in case you guys didn't realize that, if you're listening to this as a podcast later, this started out a live stream. And those of you on the live stream, later it'll be a podcast. So if you want to listen to the rest of it while you're traveling on the road, check out the podcast version. They're a little bit different, but the main content is the same. And I will actually put a link because I am prepared for the most part. I don't want to say I'm totally prepared because that's never going to be true. But Shop Talk Podcast, I'm going to put a link for it right here in the chat. You can click on that. That is the podcast page. If you have a phone, like I have an iPhone, something other XR, I think. There's podcast apps on that phone. There's actually one that comes on the phone. That's the best way to listen to it. So don't use my link if you have a phone. Only use my link if you want to use your web browser. And I imagine that's only a person in their mid 80s that's using their web browser to listen to a podcast. That's what I imagine. So I don't want to insult anybody that says there's apps out there. There's a guy out there going, I didn't know there's apps for podcasts. I'm sorry about that. Another link here is to our Facebook page. Copy and paste that down there too. And here we are. And you can follow us on Facebook. We have updates about when we're going live. I also put those in the HVAC Shop Talk group. So if you're in that group, you're going to see that as well. And last but not least, we started an Instagram because we're just glutton for punishment here. We just want to be on the computer all day and never go outside again, I guess, which is not true. Had a fun time outside today, actually. There's our Instagram right there. You can follow us there as well. I do like to go outside. I work a lot in the evening. That's why I do shows in the evening. I'm awful grateful for guests that are willing to come on in the evening because for a lot of them, it's their spare time. They're not at work. They're doing this in their off time, which I really do appreciate. I spent my day playing my daughter in soccer and trying to continue to become thinner, which is my lifelong goal because I was extremely unhealthy before. So I can now run playing soccer for a few minutes before I just kind of fall over and start wheezing, which is an improvement, believe it or not. That's an improvement. Eric Kaiser, one of our guests, is in the chat. So if you're a guest of ours, I'm going to put your comment up front and center. It says, who had a podcast in the mid 80s? No, if you're in your mid 80s, age wise, not in the mid 80s, those podcasts were called radio shows. That was back in the day. So they changed that now. They're called podcasts now, Eric. Come on, get with the times, man. You're the same age as me. Anyway, I think. All right, guys. Like we have Don Gillis tonight from Emerson. He's going to have some great knowledge here. We're going to have a lot of, discussions on refrigerants, especially these new refrigerants that everybody's like, I don't know about this. It's like, I like 410. Actually, let's go back. Everybody's like, I certainly do. This happened for generations and generations. There was a guys out there who remember, like, I really liked R12. R12 was a good one. Why'd we change? And then those guys had children, and those guys were like, I really like 22. Why do we have to go to 410A? And then those guys had children, and then they were the 410. You see how it works. So we're going to learn about these new refrigerants, so we're not afraid of them. We're going to talk maybe a little bit about compressors too, because this is Emerson. So the Copeland Scroll is very, very popular. They're in, I don't know what percentage of machines, but it's a lot of machines out there that the Copeland Scroll is in. So let me not keep talking because I can do this all night and we don't need for that to happen. Play a little ad right here from our friends at Refrigeration Technologies, and I will be right back with Don. Refrigeration Technologies makes some of the best HVAC chemicals around, and that includes wet rag heat blocking putty that prevents your vital system components from being damaged while you're brazing. Also, there's Nylog, gasket and thread sealant, a variety of uses including sealing up flares, gaskets, and other HVAC joints and connections. Last but not least, there's Viper Aerosol Cleaner. I use it on evaporator coils. It foams up beautifully, does a great job cleaning. So if you need anything in the HVAC chemical arena, choose Refrigeration Technologies. You can find out more at refrigetech.com and purchase at truetechtools.com. All right, we have my man Don. What's up, man?
Hi. How's it going, Zach?
It is great. You're a first timer on the show. It took too long, really. The podcast has been going for like 4 years now. You're the first time on here, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be on here many, many times, I sense, in the future.
I wore your hat today. It was just coincidental. I wore the HVAC. Yeah.
That's nice. Oh, that's right. We
Yeah.
gotta give away more hats. Actually, we haven't had a hat giveaway in a while. We need to be doing that. So now, where were you wearing it? Were you wearing it at work?
So no, I think there's a policy on that. But I did wear it back into the office. After work, I had to run back to my office and grab something. So I threw it on my head, and I did actually go in the building, and hopefully, and it was, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I did. It's a good looking hat. I put it on and I looked at it, and I had like 3 hats there, and I grabbed it and I put it on, and I thought, that's ironic. I'm going to be on that podcast tonight. So, but it's a good looking hat.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm not
Yeah.
a clothes designer, so I go into the print shop who does all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what I need. And all I remember is there's a man from California who watches our show. His name is Juan Valdivino. He's like, will you please make a trucker hat? And that's the only thing that came into my mind. So I said, I want a trucker hat. And that's why they're trucker hats now. So that's the story of our hats. That's pretty exciting for Friday night. Stay tuned for more on the Hat Channel later this evening. So Don, since this is your first time, we had to break the ice. Why don't you give us what I like to call the 2-minute history of Don? And we can stick to HVAC because some of our guests started talking about their birth and stuff. Had to kind of cut them off. So HVAC wise.
Yeah. So right before I got in the industry, I've been in not quite around 28 years or so, somewhere there. And how I got here was I was a laid off union steel worker. I was actually a certified welder. But anyways, I started out with a little mom and pop shop, 20 some years ago, not too far from here, about an hour away at a Lennox dealer. And to expedite the story, I probably worked for 5 different places, maybe HVAC places, refrigeration. And I eventually worked my way up to a service manager position. I live right on the state line of Ohio and Indiana. So I'm from Ohio, but I'm 7 minutes away from the west state line in Indiana. So I commuted to Fort Wayne for about 14 years or so, maybe a little less. But I was a service manager for about 9.5 years, I believe. And we were pretty high volume. And quite frankly, I just got a little burnt out. If you've been a service manager or been around that kind of stuff before, I started twitching. I started losing my hair. I gained a lot of weight. And I'm being sincere on that one. I became huge because it started out, in the truck a lot of the times. And then, as we grew, how that goes, but it more and more in the office, and I wasn't used to that. And so I took some outside sales position just to reinvent myself. And I did that for about 2.5 years. I was a territorial manager for a couple wholesalers or a wholesaler, covered Indiana, Illinois, and part of Ohio. And then this job came open. And it just, the planets all lined up perfectly. They needed somebody that lived in the area close to the Copeland plant in Sydney. And I'm about 35, 40 minutes away going east. And somebody with some type of background like this to teach this stuff. And so I had that. And somebody that was willing to travel, 35, 40 weeks a year. So I hit all those things. And so now I'm on your podcast.
Oh, all right. So what all do you teach? Are there specific courses that you teach over and over again?
Yeah. So our courses range from 4 hours to 5 days. We teach wholesalers. We do mostly contractors, but we train trainers. We do vocational schools, colleges, mostly wholesalers, though. We're actually invited in. A lot of people don't know that. Why don't you guys come to Miami or something like that? And what they don't realize is we have this, pricing out there that's like a flat rate, if you will. And, wholesaler X or whatever calls and says, hey, we want to hold this class. What's that cost? And they give them the price. They book it, for January or whatever for next year. We're usually booked about a year out. And so they book that, and then whether it's, I'm just throwing numbers out there. I don't get that side of it, but if it's $1,000, it doesn't, that to cost, charge me to come out there. Obviously it's not, it's a lot more than that, but it doesn't matter whether they put 2 people in the seat or 22 people's in the seats, but it's their responsibility to fill the seats, I guess is what I'm getting. And that's never usually a problem, because I think Copeland, Emerson has done a really good job in the past of putting out good quality material and and I hear it a lot. I'm proud to be a part of it because we hear it a lot about, hey, really like it. That wasn't it's not salesy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's technical training, which, usually it's pretty good feedback.
Is it mostly compressor related, or do you teach specific refrigerant courses as well?
I kind of dodged your question there. So everything has compressors in it for sure. Ironically, let's say we have 8 courses, again, ranging from 4 hours to 5 days. Ironically, as silly as it sounds, 4 or 5 of these courses might start out with the basic refrigeration cycle, because as it was explained to me from guys that are no longer there, that were in their 70s and 80s, my mentors when I came on board, that had been doing this a long time, you get a small class for us is like 24 people, and we only have them for 8 hours, and I'm back out of there and on a plane and going somewhere else. But the reason I'm saying all that, the way it was explained to me by guys that have done this for so long before I got here, is you get them to raise their hand at the beginning out of 24 people in a small class. How long you been doing this? And you go around the room and you might have somebody, 10 of them might be less than 2 years, and 5 of them might be 22 years, or, and everything in between. So you have to start out with, making sure everybody's on the same page before you progressively get harder, as you know. But yeah, we do a lot of, so we got a class based just on refrigerants. We released that class 2 years ago. It's called Fit for the Future, and it's all about A2Ls and those kind of things. We have a CO2 class. We have a CO2 trainer. We have a residential scroll class. We have what we call a cost class, which is a signature class, which anybody that's been to our classes probably knows that. It's a compressor operations service seminar is what it stands for. But it's a 3-day class where we, teach the basics, fundamentals the first day. The second day is all compressors. It's almost like a history lesson of compressors, but we go internally and show you up on the PowerPoint what's inside. So if you hear or see something or get a funky reading, you'll know why that is, maybe what you're looking for, depending on the windings and different things like that. So, and then by the third day, in the morning we do theory, and then we go to the hands-on, and it's always really cool because by the time that cost class is really cool to deliver, by the third day, you tell them on the first day, on the third day, you're actually going to be able to tear a compressor down and tell us what you think caused the problem. And most of them are kind of looking at you like you're crazy, and believe it or not, they do. It's just, but it's very small increments of what we lead up to that. But yeah, good stuff.
That if I come to your class, you say tear a compressor down, and you get to me, and there's 2 halves of a compressor sitting there, and it's over. Say, what was the problem, Zach? I'm gonna say someone cut this compressor in half. It's a massive leak. See, this would be funnier if Don wasn't frozen. The rest of you are probably laughing. You totally froze up for like 5 seconds. Yeah, you froze up for like 5 seconds. And I thought that joke just died. That did not go over.
Can you see me okay? Can you hear me now?
I can see. You froze up for a second. You disappeared. Oh, you're coming in and out there, Don. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Am I okay now?
Yeah, you're okay now. This happens from time to time. It's the love of live entertainment. This is what happens. So, okay. Let's start the first question here. Let's get into a little bit about the refrigerants first, because we're going to make an assumption that people understand the refrigeration cycle for this live stream. We're going to assume that's the truth because we don't have time to go into the refrigeration cycle. So that's basically why we're doing that. And I like that our buddy down there in the chat, we have our good friend Jason Abjute, who's laughing at our technical failures. And that's how you know he's a buddy, because he's laughing at your failures. That's how you know that. So let's talk about the new refrigerants that are coming out. Let's go ahead and talk about those categories, because let's just establish what they are. What is an A2L refrigerant? Because we hear that all the time. It's like, we're getting A2L. It's like, oh no, it's the end of the world. What is an A2L?
Yeah. So an A2L is, so the first character, I'm just going to start it with the basics. The first character, that A, is telling you the toxicity. And the second letter of that is from ASHRAE. These letters and numbers are from ASHRAE, is the flammability. So what the legend refrigerants is an A1. The A2L, if you will, is the new kid on the block. It's it's non-toxic or low toxicity and mildly flammable. And then you have like propane, which is an A3. So that's what's coming at us right now, the A2Ls though.
What separates an A2L from an A3?
Jason would probably be the one, but the difference is just I don't know if I can explain it very well, but it has to do with the ignition. I actually just got Jason's book yesterday. Thanks, Jason, if you're listening. I appreciate that. But it has something to do how fast it ignites. And if you read up on the A2Ls, there is danger there, but it's not anything like A3. A3, we all know, we're all familiar with A3 because we've had it with our gas grills. The only difference, really, to be honest with you, is that is the stench of the refrigerant. There's not a whole lot different there, the characteristics of it. But the A2L, it's just how easy it ignites. And I don't know if Jason could come on. He might be able to give you more detail of it. I know there's a lot of tests. In fact, I was just watching one on Chemours web station not too long ago. Oh, Dr. Chuck, from Chemours does a little thing, and I watched one of his things the other day, and he actually had they do all the testing for A2L. It's a funny little thing. I just learned this the other day, which is just ironic. I'm here, but they do all the testing on A2Ls with R32, which if you're ever in a Jeopardy quiz or anything like that, that's something you can take with you. Dr. Chuck actually went in the lab, and he had this young man that works in the lab, and he was showing how it did it. And they did little things like that. I lock away like, oh, that's interesting. R32.
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here because I just read the same thing that you are going to read or just read. And I want to say that the burning, I know he's putting down, it's the burning velocity and the minimum ignition energy. But I think the burning velocity for A2Ls is less than 10 centimeters a second. And if I got that right, I'm going to be very proud of myself. I'm just going to go ahead and tell everybody out there right now, I'll be very proud of myself. And I know that I remember seeing like the ignition energy, and propane was like way lower than anything else. They were talking like 30 to 300 or 100 to 300. And I want to say it's millijoules or joules. He can help me out with that. But it's way lower for the A3 refrigerants. So thank you, Jason. I knew Jason would be here. We have all sorts of former guests in here. That's why I like this show. You get former guests, and and speaking of former guests, there's Justin Beaver's in there too. He's co-host for the other show. Man, all right. One big happy family. Okay, so basically it's gonna burn faster. The A3s are. That's why they have a charge limit. I guess they don't want to fill up a room and then erase all the contents of that room with a giant explosion. So, but you guys. Oh, good. I got a thumbs up from Jason. I must have done something right. Okay. So you guys specialize in compressors. So when you talk about refrigeration cycle, when you talk about compressors, we should imagine it the same way transferring over to A2Ls and A3. The system itself, the design itself, does it change at all?
Well, that's a good question. So here, and I gave this some thought prior to last week before I had that freak thing happen to my eyes and I missed out. So the mechanics of the compressor isn't going to change a whole bunch for the A2Ls. And I'm actually getting data. Our team is getting data from the European website from Emerson, really, because we don't really have them really in the States yet. But some of the things you will see differently in there are going to be some internal changes. I can't get really deep dive in here, but it's right around the screen. The thing I do want to share with you are the things you're going to probably think, oh, that makes sense, but things that we take for granted. Maybe if something was to come with a sight glass where it was threaded on before, maybe you're going to see it brazed on, brazed discharge check valves, the electrical boxes will be cased differently, those kind of things that like now, there's going to be just anything you can think of. Maybe if there's a Schrader there with where you can get to oil, that'll be designed differently. So anything that's possible that could possibly let anything leak out will be the changes. As far as internally, I'd love to tell you there's going to be these huge design different changes, but it's still going to be compressing the same refrigerant. It's really about what could possibly cause a spark. But if you think about it, it needs air, so internally there's not going to be, I'd love to tell you there's going to be some amazing changes, but the changes you're going to see are going to be more externally and really preventing any kind of leak, really, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far. And I'm in this quite a bit.
Now, as far as the rest of the system, once it leaves the compressor, goes through all the different parts of the refrigeration cycle, are there going to be any components, anything added to the system special to suit an A2L or A3 refrigerant?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Washington State has already passed some, if you don't know, some time back with some codes and things going in. I think that's what the holdup is right now. A lot of it, I think America's trying to catch up with our fire departments and our building codes and those kind of things. But as far as the system, I foresee, it hasn't been documented yet, that I've seen anyways, but I foresee, let's say, for example, let's just hypothetically say it's in a refrigerator, for example, or something like that. I foresee built-in alarms and those kind of things where they either shut the system down. I know years ago I did a lot of zoning and smoke detectors and smoke alarms for commercial jobs and fire dampers, and I think it'll be similar to that. I think you'll see a shutdown of some sort or some kind of prevention of some sort, and I don't know what that looks like right now, but without a doubt, there's going to be some type of some type of safety device. But if you think about it, Zach, I mean, this is what when I teach that section, that regulation section, which I do all the time in our class, it's about an hour long. Surprising, you would think people would fall asleep on it, as Jason can probably contest to, and you brought the topic up that you wanted to talk about. There's a lot of interest in it. It blew my mind the first time I started teaching it, because it was like, something you would think would be boring, but actually it's some of the most engagement we get on the first day, because most of its fundamentals is because why aren't we hearing about this? I've been talking about this Emerson's been talking about for a long time, but when I came on board almost 4 years ago, we were talking about. But the thing about it is that I always try to break down that barrier, that fear factor is, R32s, it's in your PTEC units, it's in your window units. A lot of people don't know that Asia never did go to R410A. They went right to R32, and people look at you like, why would they do that? Well, a different world, if you will, so they went right to the mildly flammable. They've been around it a long time. So I try to knock that fear down. And if you think about the like 1, 2, 3, 4 YF, for example, if you're a car guy or gal, that's in your cars. It's been in your cars for a while. So there's no reason to fear it, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's here. It's not going anywhere. I mean, you're talking about, let me pull something up here real quick. You're talking about, I'm looking at a chart here. Do you want me to show this?
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, you can share the screen.
Yeah, I think I can. Let me see.
Let the technology do its thing.
Okay. Share screen. No, how do I pick that up? I got to figure out how to pick that up.
That's all right. I can tell stories until you have it ready.
Okay.
Let me see what I can come up with here. Well, I'll tell you what, I put up our R32 frame too, talking a little bit about R32, why it's been chosen over 410A. Different little points right there. Of course, it has 0 ODP like a lot of the other ones nowadays. The last one with an ODP, I guess, would have been R22 that I'm really used to. The GWP is much less, and we can talk about GWP in a minute. And it is non-toxic. I don't think we work with any in residential that are toxic. The only one I can think of that's really toxic is ammonia, and we're nowhere near that. Thank goodness.
Well, I can't get it up for some reason on this. Pull it up here. So let me just look at it. What I really wanted to say is, we're looking at, H2 or HFOs. We're looking at R32 is the highest that I can see on our chart for, GWP. And we're looking right around, it looks like it's pretty close to 650 or 700, somewhere thereabouts. And everything else is below that. So, if you take, for example, some of the other refrigerants. 448, 449 is new, and that's already at, that's up at 1200 GWP. And if you're talking about some of these things that carbs get into, I mean, they're looking at residential light commercial at 750 GWP, on new equipment, not existing, but new equipment. So, I mean, that's a long ways to get down there. And some of these things, they're talking, I mean, Carrier, what they announced, a year ago, 454B by 2023. I remember when they announced that, I started talking about it in class. In fact, I added it to our chart, and people are like, where were we at when this? And, but you're probably like I am. I get a lot of contractor rags or magazines or, maggots come to the house, and I have for years just to stay up on that kind of stuff. I like reading about it. But, a lot of people, I think that's the biggest thing. It's good to see Jason and everyone, writing books and doing that thing, because and you want to talk about this. And I think it's great because it's coming really fast. And the reason it's close to my heart to get all sappy with you, don't even want to start crying out there, but my oldest son, I think he's 35, somewhere thereabouts, but he actually rode shotgun with me. Gosh, probably wasn't even legal. He was probably 16 or so, maybe, on calls, and then eventually started working around me. And but anyways, he went from being a licensed journeyman recently to owning his own business. He's a contractor now over in Fort Wayne. Wow. And so I like that. I think of him sometimes, and I think of other people when I'm teaching about getting that word out, because he has no clue, and hopefully he's not listening, but he just doesn't. A lot of contractors don't. That how it is, Zach. They're focused on the job at hand. They're thinking about their next call. Or I wonder if I'm going to get this. And sometimes the elements are, they're not. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't stay up on this, so it's good that we're ringing that bell.
Yeah, I agree with you. The subject, I don't know why it's interesting to me. It just is. It's the science of it's interesting to me. And reading something new is interesting to me. And I think it's one of those things where because I'm not in the field very much anymore. Periodically, I do stuff in the field. But I think if I were still in the field, I'd be part of a mass of people that would be sort of apprehensive about the new refrigerator. So I figure we can kind of dispel some of that fear and talk about it and kind of set people's mind at ease and sort of prime them to be trained, to be confident when they work on it. That's what I'm hoping we can accomplish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We'll see how we
do. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you 100%.
So we talked about some A2Ls. Now let's talk about, let's break it down a little bit farther, because A2Ls, we're talking about R32. We're talking about an HFC refrigerant, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if we go to like let's say there was 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll bring up the thing because sometimes I forget what their names are. HFOs 1, 2, 3, 4, YF, ZE.
Mm-hmm.
HFO, how is that different than an HFC, and what is an HFO in the basic term that we can, we're field guys, so give us what we can actually use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, oh gosh, now I'm going to be put on the spot. Hydrofluoro, my mind just went blank all of a sudden. God, I'm so sorry.
It's not a problem. Some of those things are quite the tongue twisters.
You had me on to talk about HFOs, and now I can't remember what the O stands for.
Well, I can give that one away. That's olefins.
There you go. So, anyways, yeah. So it's basically just amounts to what the reason they're going to them is just basically because of the global warming potential. They're trying to get it down. The 1, 2, 3, 4 YF is the one to look out for. And I don't think I'm letting any secrets out here, but if you're not aware of that top one, you will soon be, because then, and some of you already might know this. I don't know what everybody knows, because I work near a lab where they've been trying these refrigerants out for 4 years. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of 513 yet, but I don't think it's been released. It might be, but will replace 134A. But that's what we do in the design center there, where we do a lot of UL testing and what have you. But that 1, 2, 3, 4 YF is the global warming potential of 1. Actually, it says right there less than 4. I believe it's 1. I don't believe, I know it is. But the reason I'm saying that is that is going to be a blend a refrigerant that's going to be in a lot of future blends, if you will, if you know what I'm saying. That will be part of the makeup, like R32 is for 410A.
Right.
That'll be a big part of the future refrigerants around, and it's all about getting down there. Now, how does it differ from the HFCs other than, I mean, the oil is going to be the same. It's mildly flammable. Other than the global warming potential, I think the real push is, I don't think I know, is the real push is just the global warming potential. We're under the gun, and we're really, 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 I don't fear it. I embrace it, but I don't think people realize how quick this is going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen very fast. I guess what I always said, 3 years ago, even, why is a compressor manufacturer paying me out here to talk about refrigerants, natural refrigerants, HFOs, A2Ls, or whatever? Why would you? The answer is easy. They're tooling up for them, and if they're tooling up for them, they're coming. And they're not. And Europe's already, they're so far ahead of us. I mean, I know we don't use natural refrigerants and HFCs, but you may even do that someday. I mean, already they've got CO2 heat pumps over in Europe and what have you. So, I mean, there's a lot of change coming. Where if you follow the history of all of that kind of stuff, you'll see it. It's Europe, Canada, and then the U.S. We're always kind of lagging behind on it. We're easily 15 years behind Europe right now on refrigerants and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, Honeywell, Europe is so stringent about letting in the GWPs. They 3 years ago said they're going to start charging by the metric tonnage of the global warming potential. Don't ask me how to explain that, but they're charging by the metric ton. So how much you can ship in. So Honeywell made a decision. You take 404A, for example, not that we use that in HVAC, but it's 4,900 or 3,600, I believe. Yeah, 3,600. And 134A is 1,300. So, so what they decided, they made a decision 3 years ago. They were going to stop shipping 404A because they can ship more 134A in, because of the global warming potential is about a third of the 404A. They just decided to do that. You take 448 and 449, for example. It's now that's become really common conversation with refrigeration people, but that's been over in Europe for quite some time. They've been using that for some time now, and you still have a lot of people, even in refrigeration, that I never heard of that one. What would be a good? I just had a friend call me not too long ago. He's bidding on a job over in Indianapolis. And he said, "Hey, you're in this world now. I'm bidding on this walk-in cooler. What's a good replacement for 404A?" And I said, "A lot of folks are going with 448, And I know we're getting away from the HVAC, but I'm just refrigerants in general. It's changing so fast right now."
Well, no, it's fine to stray from topic. Remember, I said beforehand, we're going to stray from topic. It's all what we're about here. It's readily acceptable. Which that answers a question I was going to have. So 448 and 449 are both replacements for 404A.
That is correct. They're low or medium. One of them, if Eric's on the line, he'll know this. One of them, I always forget it. I always get it backwards. One of them is Honeywell's. One of them is Chemours. One of them has 3 blends in it, and the other one has 4. And they're almost identical. As far as PT and what have you, and what it is. I hate to even guess which one's which, because it seems like every time I do, I butcher it. I'll get it wrong. But one of them's owned by Chemours and one of them's owned by Honeywell, and one of them has 3 blends in it, or 3 components. And the other one has four components in it, and I'm not sure which one's which.
Well, let's transfer back to one of the combo refrigerants you were talking about, because I brought up some pictures here, and this is 466A, and I know people out there are probably the same as us here. There's about 1 million different refrigerants swirling around in people's heads. So I'm trying to, we'll try to keep it to the focus of what you're going to see the most of. So this is Honeywell's answer to phasing out 410A, and it's 466A. And as you see in the composition, it's R32, which we've been talking about the whole time, except this one is different because it's an A1. The other ones are all A2Ls, and my grasp of this is they just added some of the R125 to make it non-flammable or an A1. But I
Mm-hmm.
guess the sacrifice there was the GWP is higher. It says it's 733. So I guess the GWP is higher because of the 125. Is that a correct reasoning?
Yes, absolutely. No, you nailed it. In fact, I've been corrected about that a couple times in the middle of training, and I've had people that know way more than I do. I don't think that's right, and we've had to go back and research it. And sure enough, yeah, the only reason that's why 410A is so high. You take the fire deterrent, the R125, Zach, you nailed it. That's exactly what it's there for. You remove that and take it back to its natural R2. The global warming potential difference is immense, and that's exactly what it's there for. And that's why 454B came to me anyways. And like I said, we had these graphs out for a long time. We were talking about it, and we had already had a suspect of what was going to replace 410A. Well, one of them was R32, and the other one, I don't even remember what it was, but it wasn't 454B. When Carrier announced that, and I don't like to name drop, but when they announced that, it was like, I had to go change our slides. Like, they just came out of the blue. But the catch there, where I'm headed with this is they didn't have the R125 in there. This was lower than even R32, which was mind blowing. Because that was, they thought everybody thought, or we all thought, unless somebody, the conversations I was having anyways, this is going to be it. But we'd put it on the bottom of the slide. We don't get involved in that end of it. We don't know what's going to happen there. But so we'll wait and see. R32 is owned by Daikin, I believe. And so
they're using
they've announced
it. I know that.
Yeah. I think they're going to use it. I think now the last I heard from people that work with that product are from wholesalers that sell Daikin product. I think they're definitely going to go with R32 in their mini splits and things like that. I'm not sure about their unitary products yet, but I get a lot of this is, no one, I think everybody's holding their cards to their chest right now and not saying too much of anything, as far as what they're going to do.
Yep. And I guess there's three different segments here because we have R32, which Daikin has been using. And I want to say Mitsubishi uses overseas, I think. And so you have that's established overseas, which bodes well for the United States because usually we get, like you're saying, we get whatever they have. We adopt it eventually. And then there's the 466A, which I don't know where that's going to go. The one we just looked at, I'm not quite sure if that's going to go into any particular equipment. But then there's the Chemours one, and it's going into Carrier. So you have three different refrigerants now. So it's getting a little confusing. Because it used to be we could have one refrigerant to work on. Now we're going to have three. And if they lower the GWP standard, a couple of those, like now Jason and I were talking, it's like 750 is like their magic number that they've been saying. So if you get lower than that, then a couple of those fall out down the wayside. So I don't know. I think Don's frozen again. Or else he's really thinking about this, guys. Wait, there he is. He's moving. I think he's alive. Let's see. Can you hear me, Don? Don, can you hear me? I don't know if Don's internet.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're just breaking up a lot. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Frozen on your side. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You are frozen a little bit. I can hear you. And if you want, go down to the bottom of the screen and turn off your camera and see if that helps.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So this is the modern era of COVID right here, guys. He froze up again. Well, I'm just going to keep talking about refrigerants. There he goes. Okay. Can you hear me, Don?
Hey, look at that. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
That might be better. Yep, I can hear you. All right. I think we can do this. I think.
I thought I had pretty good internet or Wi-Fi.
Well, it might be bad just right now. That's called HVAC Shop Talk luck. So I don't know how much you heard of what I was just saying because I think you froze up about midway through it. But I was just comparing because now we have three different refrigerants that our industry may have to know fairly well, especially if someone adopts the Honeywell version. So, I mean, what do you guys cover those particular refrigerants in like a class, or how do you treat that situation? He might be froze up again.
Can you
I
hear
don't
me?
know if Don can. Don, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I think you keep losing me in and out.
Yeah, I had a couple windows open, but nothing major. It should be, I'm doing everything I can on my end. I'm not sure what's going on.
Well, we'll give it another minute. If it dies here in a minute, we'll just say that's the end of the show.
Okay. And I'm out of here.
We'll see. But you can hear me right now. So did you hear what I said about the Emerson training classes?
I did not, Zach.
So I was just asking if these three different refrigerants, if they might be prominent in our industry. The 466 from Honeywell, 454 from Chemours, and R32. Do you guys treat individually? Do you have courses concerning each one of those refrigerants, or is it part of a major course like A2Ls or new refrigerants? How do you treat that in a training aspect?
So that we would classify that as a whole, as a refrigerant class. Again, we have a class that's 4 hours long that's called Fit for the Future. We've had it out. We unveiled it 3 years ago now, I believe. And it's basically just from bell to bell talking about exactly what we've been discussing most of all. And it wouldn't matter who the manufacturer was. We're any skin in the game there. We work with all the manufacturers on the refrigerants and what have you. So, and a lot of our products too, as you probably know, especially on the refrigeration side, and you take some of our condensers, there are multiple refrigerants. You can use anything in them, so it doesn't matter. It just depends on the application. So, you take your air conditioning refrigerants, for example. I mean, you could do the R22 and the 407s and what have you. And, ironically, I don't know if you know this or not, but 290 is the same, almost identical. If anyone's listening out there, if you get into the 290, the propane stuff, it on the PT chart, it's identical to R22. I had someone reach out to me from Europe and tell me, he goes, I don't know why you guys, technically say these other refrigerants won't work in these. And he says, I've been running this. I can't remember if it was vice versa, but I've been running 290 in the R22 or vice versa. And he said, it's been doing fine. Well, it may be doing fine. It's the safety factor of it, but mechanically it'll run.
And 290 uses mineral oil, doesn't it?
Yeah. 290 is a POE oil.
Is it a POE? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was mineral oil.
No, it's a POE oil. And the thing about that, since you brought it up, one of the safety things you're looking for with 290 is you'll have like your red sleeves around the ports. You don't leave the service ports in; those are pinched and crimped in every time they're taken out. But when it comes to the manufacturer of compressors, where it says the oil, when you go through the nomenclature, when it says oil, it'll say P for POE oil, or it will have on the nomenclature, it will actually tell you it's POE oil for propane or R290. Actually, it's a U, but it goes down when you go to the letter to U, it'll say POE oil, but it'll say R290 next to it. It specifies that's what it's there for.
Well, sort of in that same vein of conversation, I'm used to using Emerson compressors all throughout the year. CR reciprocating compressors, ZR scrolls, and I think ZP. Is that 410A? ZP scrolls?
Yep, that's correct.
Is that the same as, are the scrolls going to have their own nomenclature for each one of these refrigerants that I've referred to, or is there going to be one scroll built for all three of them? Do you know how that's going to work?
Yeah, so what you're going to do, it's going to be capacity. It's going to be like a high, like for AC or medium, it's going to be classified in that area. So that refrigerant it'll be like the second letter of the character. Let's take scroll, for example. It'll have Z, and then you said P or Z, whatever. Even if we go down to low temperature ZFs, it just tells like what application it is, whether it's medium, high, or low. That's how it's going to work. It's not going to be different for each refrigerant, but yes, that's a good question.
So they're going to be relatively similar, except for maybe some minor changes to the 410A compressor overall.
Yeah, the 410A will definitely be different. Obviously, that's going to be a little, it's going to have a little higher internal pressure reliefs and different things like that because of the pressures. Like an internal pressure relief for basic scroll is somewhere around, I think, 425. You need a differential between the discharge top of the compressor to the low suction side, and it'll go off on high pressure. So if you get any kind of blockage or a difference, and it doesn't turn into a giant hand grenade, if you will, of something catastrophic, it releases. That's when you hear that sound, that air brake type sound. Now on 410A, that's like 650 differential, so it's because the pressures are so much higher. But yeah, the 410 would be the unique example, and CO2 obviously too on the transcritical side.
And you had mentioned before, I know this strays away from our topic, but you mentioned CO2 heat pumps overseas. What is the
Mhm.
application for those heat pumps?
You know, I just saw the article about a month ago, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Andre Patnaud, but he's kind of a speaker for us globally. He's recognized as a natural refrigerant, CO2 kind of a guru. He spears up a lot of the stuff that happens at the Helix. And we're in a bi-weekly meeting with all the different things that are changing around the world for an hour, just kind of talking about news. And I sent him the article, but it had something to do with I can't remember if it was Zach, I don't know if I can remember exactly what it was for. I just read the article, and because it was the first time I had seen anything with CO2 in it as far as residential or light commercial, and I sent it to Andre right away because he was telling me a year or two ago that Japan was already working on residential units with CO2 in them, and I was trying to wrap my head around that because a CO2 system is it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts on it. And how are you going to put that in a very small unit? But when I saw the unit, they actually had an illustration of it. I saw it. It looked like, it wasn't small. It was about the size of a small rooftop, about half the size of a small rooftop. But it was a lot more compact than I imagined it was going to be. But I can't remember I'm not sure if it was pigeonholed into any one certain application. I just know that it was for a heat pump. It was a short story that it was in an article that I came across.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I have very little knowledge on CO2, and maybe I need to have you back to talk about CO2 or make a dedicated show on that, I think, just for my own knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll inspire me to read, which is a good thing too. I'll read about that. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really cool to me that there would be a CO2 heat pump, especially in a residential application, which you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
residential or light commercial, because that
Mm-hmm.
kind of indicates it's going to be, if it's residential application, that means it's going to be used for comfort cooling, is what I
Yeah.
would assume. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. No, I no one can predict the future, but I truly, I have no skin in the game. I'm not pushing, anything. It is what it is. Your beliefs are your beliefs. But I can tell you this: the one thing I do like to talk about when I talk about CO2, to kind of, I don't like to bring politics up at all in anything I do in life. I just don't like talking about it. So I try to take those walls down whenever I go into a city or a classroom or whatever. But the thing is that a lot of people don't realize is we talk about natural refrigerants or HFOs. A lot of these refrigerants are very efficient. You take, for example, compression ratio. We don't use it a lot in HVAC, but we use a lot in refrigeration. But a compression ratio is just, your suction to your discharge, right? So on air conditioning, it's 3-to-1. At medium temp, it's 5-to-1. Low temp is 10-to-1. The farther those numbers get apart, the harder that compressor is working. Common sense. It's more robust. Well, when you take a CO2 compressor on low temperature, the compression ratio is 2-to-1. I mean, it's very, very efficient. The heat transfer is just like R290. It's incredible. I mean, that's why Aldi's and all these stores are converting over when they're remodeling and stuff. I mean, they know already. Not to mention, you don't have to be very wise to realize how long have we've been doing this, Zach, and everybody that's listening right now, and how many times have we seen it? You started the show off saying, well, my grandfather used R12, and why'd we get rid of that? And we're 22 and stuff like that. Some people are showing up at these classes sometimes on these natural refrigerant classes that we give, and they're not even technicians. They're store owners, and they own a chain of stores, and they just don't want to keep changing refrigerants, quite honestly, so they're betting on the fact that, hey, this will be something that the government, and I don't mean that in a bad way, can come in and say, hey, you got to get rid of that now. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of interest there.
That is interesting. And I will ask you this now. I actually have two questions here. First, CO2, you said compression ratio is much better, 2-to-1. So really, really good. So, but the actual running pressures are very much higher than the stuff we're used to, correct?
Yeah. So when you talk about CO2, here's where it gets a little complicated. You have what they call subcritical and transcritical. So if you have a rack system, for example, and you have on that rack system, the whole system, instead of having two different refrigerants on the medium side and the low side, like a cascade system, if you will, the CO2 is in both systems. So what happens is you don't see those high pressures of 1,700 pounds or so leaving the discharge line until it gets 87.8 degrees outside. Let's just say 80. To a lot of people, they say, well, geez, that's worthless. It's not necessarily. We have some software that is free. You can download that's called PSS software, and you can actually run, how many hours of the year, nighttime, fall, winter in Atlanta, Georgia, that you're actually running below 87.8 degrees. It's surprisingly not as high as you think it would be. We actually have a supermarket that we were heavily involved in 4 or 5 years ago that's down in CO2 right now. No, there's other things, devices that come into play. You might have a mechanical subcooling. Adiabatic is really, really popular. And adiabatic is nothing more than like a swamp cooler or a residential humidifier, if that's easier for you to visualize, which I've done hundreds and thousands of them my whole life. I mean, that's what I did a lot of. But think about those water panels on the outside of that condenser. Just picture a rooftop unit with water panels on the outside of it before it goes to the condenser. And the way the adiabatic does, when it hits that 88 degrees, water starts to trickle down through those panels. The air travels through those water panels. So the condenser might see 15 degrees less when in fact it's 89 degrees outside or 90 degrees out. So you can get a lot of push that way too. So there's a lot of different things going on out there. They've got ejectors, but that's for another day. But yeah, it's but on the low temperature side, you're removing the heat. You can't condense above 87.8. That's the biggest problem. When we reject heat in the condenser, we reject that heat, we start to condense, right? Well, refrigerant above the PT chart, above 87.8 degrees, there's no numbers on the PT chart for CO2 because it's neither a liquid or a vapor. It becomes a fluid is how it's defined, and it has no pressure temperature relationship. So it's a transcritical fluid, and that's where the term transcritical comes from. But so anyways, you're still rejecting heat, you're just not condensing. So that's where it gets a little crazy after that. But
well, that's very interesting. I like that. We will do a show on that. That's really cool. And anyone out there that teaches this course, feel free to send me a book on it. I'm saying, I'm just gonna put that out there. Okay, just gonna hit that just real quick. I just want to say that. So let me ask you this second question that was going to come off of that. So we were talking about pressures. Now, as for the other refrigerants that we've talked about here, the R410A replacements in particular, are all of those going to be very similar pressure to 410A?
They are, yeah. And please chime in if you know differently. But yeah, I brought that question up to a friend of mine that works for one of those manufacturers we talked about. I'll just say it, Chemours. And we communicate quite a bit. And I just had a meeting with them a few weeks ago. We try to work together on different things. And Ralph with Honeywell, we work with him a lot. But that was one of the questions that I brought up to him a couple of years ago. And yes, the pressures will be very, very close to that. That's not going to change a whole bunch right there. But yeah, PT charts will be pretty much the same, the pressure temperature thing. So you won't see a lot break off from that.
All right, Don. Well, I think we've reached the point of the show here. We're going to wrap up a little bit. I know I wanted to give out your email. So if anyone wants to email Don, I'm going to put that on the screen right here. And that is Don Gillis, and that's Gillis at emerson.com. You can email him any time of day. Don will answer you right back. That's probably not true.
No, I'm pretty good at that, actually. I'm sorry for all the little hiccups on my internet and what have you.
It's not the first time this has happened. We're used to that. In the live streaming community, if we don't have a couple hiccups, we get spoiled. We don't want that to happen. But I want to thank you for coming on, Don. I really appreciate it. You'll be back again. We're going to think of some new subjects here. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, my pleasure. I really mean that. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Yes, sir. All right, we're going to let Don go. I appreciate it again, Don. And we're going to wrap this show up here in just a second. I'm going to play a little clip right here, and then I'll put my email up on the screen if you want to contact me. Usually people that contact me are like, why don't you let the other people talk more? And I'm just kidding. If you want to contact me and ask me any questions or show ideas, or maybe you want to be on the show, feel free to email me, hvacshoptalk@gmail.com. I'd be happy to talk to people. I like to get guys that are trainers like Don. I also like to get guys that are just field guys that have no specific training or teaching, but just want to tell their story about how they ended up in the field. I like all types of stories when it comes to HVAC. And believe it or not, there's educational benefits to having instructors on. There's educational benefits to just getting one of the working guys in to just tell his story, because you get a little bit of the book side, you get a little bit of the real world side, and combining those two together is where you get what I like to say, the complete knowledge of HVAC. That sounded really good. All right, I'm gonna keep that complete knowledge of HVAC. All right, let's take a quick break right here. I'm going to get my email off the screen because, frankly, none of you guys are going to email me. I'm just kidding. I want you to email me. Email me, please. Just check on me. Just say, Zach, how's it going? That's all I need right there. We're going to play a quick ad right here, and we'll be right back. The best forced air zoning controls in the HVAC industry come from EWC Controls. This includes the Workhorse BM Plus 3000 zone panel, 3 zones, multiple dip switches, so you can customize the controls to your particular system install. Another workhorse of the system is the URD and ND dampers. These power open, power closed dampers are both reliable and long lasting. So for the entire life of your system, you won't be replacing your zoning components. And lastly, the innovative SBD2 static pressure bypass with the wireless NFC interface take this whole thing to a new level of precision and reliability, because you can set your system right there at your fingertips to the particular static pressure you need. No more guesswork, no more barometric arms. Go to EWC Controls Incorporated. You can find them online to learn more, and look for them in your local supply house. Okay, guys, I'm going to go back to some of our comments here and check see if there's anything we need to address here before we get out of here. Familia Sanchez says, I have yet to work on these new refrigerants. Well, I guess that's a story that's going to be common throughout our industry, but as the years go by one, we're all going to be working on them at least once or twice, different kinds. T-Lex says, I was going to buy a CO2 system made by Sandin to do air conditioning and heat home water tank at the same time, very cheap from Japan, as they were trying to enter the market 10 years ago. That's kind of interesting. That's pretty cool. And Craig says, I wish Carrier would use Copeland instead of LG compressors. I thought they used both. I thought their low-end stuff had LG and their higher stuff had Copeland, but I don't remember. And they change. You know, different people use different things. And poor Jessica. Jessica just got home. That's the Jessica of Craig and Jessica. And I'm just going to put this out there. Craig has him and his lovely wife on the picture, his avatar, and Jessica just has herself. I'm just going to put that out there, okay? I'm just going to say that. All right, and Jason Objute says 466A has iodine as a flame suppressant as well. So that's pretty interesting as well. So some of them use R125 like 410A to make sure they are an A1 rated refrigerant, but he's saying they have iodine in there. Very, very interesting. And 466A, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Cool information right there, guys. It's good to know about the refrigerants. A lot of guys are like, who cares how much is in what or who's it? But it is going to be really, really important, because you have to follow all these guidelines. I've been reading it for the last few days about all the different things that are going to be different. And even though it might not be any earth-shattering thermodynamic revelations that happen, well, that's nice. Earth-shattering thermodynamic revelations. That's really nice. But there are little tiny things that are happening everywhere, and some really important things like storage of these refrigerants and how you transport them. You're going to have to be aware of those, because the chuck in the truck sort of thing, you can't do that now with these flammable refrigerants, because there's going to be a lot of things you're going to have to pay attention to and you're going to have to implement in your business. So we have to be aware of that. So Craig says, we have had a lot of failed LG compressors. Early on in the LG life, there was a lot of people, a lot of my friends, because I didn't service a whole lot of equipment that had LG compressors in it for whatever reason. But a lot of my friends were changing a lot of the first generation LG compressors. And as time went by, it seems like they got better. They got more reliable, but I'm not positive that which series he's talking about. All right. Jason Objute says the refrigeration cycle does not change just because the refrigerant is flammable. That's what I'm saying. See, take away some of the fear of it. There's things that don't change and there's things that do change, but there's a lot of, I'm not going to say they're administrative things, because Jason's I'm reading his stuff. So he's telling me a lot about how the equipment's going to be marked, stuff like that. You're going to have to be aware of this stuff, how you can store this, because it is a flammable material. So you can't store it the same as you would store something else that's not flammable. So, and Craig says, nowhere near those Bristol two-stage compressors. And I think he's talking about those Carrier high-efficiency systems. And I didn't deal with those personally, but I know people like my buddy Brent, and he dealt with those, and he ran into some of those, and they died a lot. Okay. So we're here at the end of the show. And I'm gonna read you guys a little bit of something right here that I selected before the show started, and I hope you enjoy it. This is from our buddies at the Bible. Our pal, our main man at the Bible. And I'm going to read this here, and we're going to get out of here. And let me see if I can remember which one of these, because I highlight different verses. Okay, I remember. And this is for us because we are in a business. We're here to make money. But remember, making money is not the most important thing in life. I'm just going to put it out there. I know people are like, you better be quiet. No, making money is not the most important thing in life. This is from our Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5 and verse 6. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? Just remember that stuff when you live your day to day. Man can do nothing to you if you're with the Lord. Okay. I know that's not HVAC, but you know, HVAC ain't as important as that. I'm just going to put it out there. So keep your right frame of mind. Good things will happen to you if you have the right frame of mind. You do the right things. So having said that, I'm going to get out of here, guys. I really appreciate it. Had a great time. I want to thank Don as well. He'll be back again. We'll be talking about some more stuff here in the future. And I'll see you guys on the next one.